Hi everyone, good evening. Charlotte here from Enriching Environments for Top Tip Tuesday on Tuesday the 2nd of March, and thank you so much for joining me here this evening. We'll wait for a few moments whilst everybody joins, whilst you're all notified and you can come online. And whilst you're doing that, we can, hi Diane, people have started coming on already, some of my regulars. Thank you for coming to the film on Friday, Dan. It was really lovely to have your input and for you to be part of that conversation. On Friday we had our first film in our spring series at Yoga House in Greens, and our first film in the series was Childhood, which is a fly on the wall documentary about a kindergarten in Norway, and it's set in this amazing Norwegian forest, rural, the most rural setting you could imagine, and it's really beautiful. Hi Nada. And so that was the first film in our spring series, and then we have 3 more to come. You can go to my feed to see all the times and the dates and the films, and also on yogahouse.ae on their feed there's all the details, and you can book via the website as well. Hi there everyone, thank you for joining. So this evening we are going to be talking about parenting triggers. What a juicy topic this is, and one that's hard to talk about actually, because not many people were thank you Diane. The movie was very interesting. It was really interesting, wasn't it? So Diane's comment is the movie was very interesting and full of positive emotions. Yeah, exactly. It was really tender and quiet and inspiring, the way that the adults interacted with the children in that environment. Quite aside from the physical environment that was so inspiring in this forest, the emotional environment the children were in from the adults and from the clean slate of all natural materials and no consumerism, no plastic. It was really, really inspiring. And the way that the adults interacted, the respect they showed the children was just really breathtaking. So yeah, it was a gorgeous film. So yes, this evening, parenting triggers, we are going to talk about this as I spoke to one of my clients at the end of last week, and she's talked to me about how she feels, how she reacts when her 4-year-old drops something or breaks something, and she is aware that her that feeling of annoyance that comes up, and she thinks it's probably from her mother's impatience around breaking things or spilling things. And so she invited me to speak about that, and so I thought actually this is a really valuable conversation to have on Instagram Live, because it's something that I think we all I know that we all deal with this. I know that this is really, really hard. I know that we are all human beings and we are all triggered. I had a conversation with a friend this afternoon actually about something that happened last summer that I'm still berating myself over, when I overreacted to something Olivia had done. And I actually misinterpreted what she meant and what she had done in that moment. So it was even worse. Not only did I overreact, but the actual situation wasn't as I had interpreted it either. So, but the triggers and our responses and our anger and how, I guess, out of control we can feel in those moments are things that I don't think are spoken about enough. Not many people talk about it enough. And that shame and that guilt that we have, like that sort of stickiness around being triggered as a parent and the responses we have to our children. There's so much shame around that, and there's so much guilt around that I think it's a really worthwhile conversation to have. So let's dive in. So this is our scenario. Our child breaks something, our child spills something. We can even refer it to our child is rude to us. Our child's disrespectful. This would be a child of age 4 or over when they're rude and disrespectful because they are working out how the world works. That's normal behaviour. But we overreact, don't we? We seek to control the situation, so we overreact. And when our child has broken something or spilt something, our response might be, oh, what a mess you've made, or you always do this, or you're so careless. Said with a lot of with anger, said with a lot of frustration. Maybe we then grab something from their hand, whatever they're carrying, or we move them out the way, but instead of moving them out the way to clear up the glass, it's more like a push, Those things that happen, and they are our moment of madness, and we have a huge amount of guilt and shame about what we've said to our child, how we've behaved to our child, how we have taken our stuff out on our child. And then we lie awake at 2, 3, 4 a.m. that night, worrying about it. We're messing them up. We are we're going to give them lasting damage. We're not learning, this is the one for me. I'm not learning this, am I? I'm regurgitating. I'm doing the same thing every time. Why am I not getting better at this? Why am I not handling this better? You've got the training, you know what you're doing, you teach on this. This is, this should be easy for you. And so it goes. I think the first thing we can do once it's happened, let's talk about in the moment afterwards. Let's first talk about what's happened in that 10 seconds or 30 seconds or 1 minute, however long it takes you to calm down and realize that we have overreacted, realize that we were acting from a place that was not who we want to be and was not ourselves, acting from a wound, from behaving, reacting, responding from a wound. The first thing we can do in that situation is just feel in our body where we are, feel in our, hi Sophia, we can feel in our body where we are, so we can notice where we're feeling dysregulated. Notice, for me, it's my jaw. I clench my teeth a lot. I used to grind my teeth a lot. I don't grind them anymore at night, but I do clench them. So for me, what is our throat constricted? Are we clenching our fists? Me as well. That's clenching my fists. What part of our body is holding tension? This is in the, thank you for the hearts, the immediate aftermath of this, of whatever has happened. Feel our body. This is 10 to 30 seconds to 1 minute afterwards. Just notice where we're dysregulated. Just notice if we did shout. Now let's get that out of our body. Let's release. Let's rub our temples or our jaw or the back of our neck. All these pressure points here, or maybe rub our neck, rub our shoulders, turn our wrists a bit. Just get back into our body at that moment, because the further we stay away from our plumb line, from our center point, then the harder it's going to be to get back. So let's just get us back first of all, and then once we're back in our body, we are going to firstly make amends with our child. That's the first thing that we're going to do. Hi there. The first thing we're going to do is make amends with our child. We are going to apologize. Apology might look like I was frustrated and I shouted at you, and I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I lost my temper. Can I help you clean the glass up? Or can I clean this up for you? Or something like that. A genuine apology. That that it's not us being remorseful, it's us letting our child know that being shouted at or whatever happened, our overreaction wasn't okay. It's not blaming us, but it's just letting them know that that's not what they should expect. Do you know what I mean? It's not shaming us, but it's letting them know that we know that our behavior wasn't appropriate, so it doesn't come, so shouting doesn't become the status quo, or whatever our overreaction was, that doesn't become the normal mode of behavior, so that they then travel through their life thinking that that is a normal way to interact with somebody. That's basically what it is. They're going to mirror us anyway. They're going to copy us and whatever we do. So if we can apologize afterwards and acknowledge and let them know that we know our behavior wasn't what it should have been, then we're just showing them that, one, we're showing them humility, but two, we're letting them know what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. So the first thing is the apology. So now let's look at two things, basically. The two things we're going to look at is one, how we can respond in the moment, and two, what we can do in the background, what we can do, what's our work surrounding this, what are our points of reflection on this that we can work on ourselves, which is a lifetime of work. Because even if we sort out the trigger now that our child breaks something, you know, when they're 6, there's going to be a different trigger. When they're 10, they're going to be a different trigger. When they're teenagers, they're going to be different triggers, and the triggers are going to be bigger. So this isn't a point of perfection that we are hoping to achieve, that we're hoping to reach right now, because that's not attainable. The only people that expect perfection from us is ourselves. The only people who expect us to be perfect parents is ourselves, and that's not true. And despite what we see online, and despite all the amazing homes we see, and despite people like myself talking about conscious parenting and peaceful parenting and how we can be doing things, it's hi Anna, good evening, nice to see you. It's everybody has triggers, everybody responds inappropriately sometimes, everyone overreacts. I'm not saying it's okay, I'm saying that it happens, and that what we can do is know that it's coming from deep within us. It's coming from our wounds. It's not coming from our rational brain. What many of you probably know, you know a little bit about this, is that when we overact in this way with our child, or with anyone actually, when we respond in a way, when we are triggered, it is coming from a wound. It is coming from probably the way that we were parented. If we get really angry when our child breaks something or spills something, it is probably because our parent got angry with us, or overreacted with us when we broke or spilt something, or when we were disrespectful when we were little. We are not responding as an adult self. We have been triggered, which means we are in the amygdala, which is the reptilian part of the brain, which puts us in fight, flight, or freeze mode. This is something which happens automatically. We're not even aware of it. We can cultivate our awareness of our triggers. We can cultivate our resilience to this, and we can start to recognize what these triggers are. And maybe not 100% of the time, but a few times we can respond differently. We can slow down the amygdala from kicking in. But we are human, and there's always going to be something that we're triggered about. We are working on this long term, forever. As I said a couple of minutes ago, this is not a hi Sam. This is not a quick fix. So lots of us know this is coming from our childhood. So we're not going to be able to respond in a logical way, in a calm way, in a peaceful way when we are triggered, unless we do lots of work. Hi Shiham, unless we do a lot of work on ourselves. So the first thing for us to know in these scenarios is our children are doing the best they can. Even if they're being disrespectful, even if they've broken something, when you've asked them to be careful with it, when you've asked them to sit down, even when they spilled something, when you had warned them about that, any of these things, children are doing the best they can in that situation. And you as the parent are probably doing the best you can as well. So beating yourself up around this is not going to help. What we can do is just really very gently, in that moment where we feel triggered, and it might be that we get halfway into a sentence, halfway into an annoyed sentence, and I do this sometimes. I start saying something, I start having my reaction, and then I can come back out of it, and then I suddenly realize and stop, and I can say something different. Like lots of people I know can use deep breathing straight away in the moment to calm themselves down. That's not something I can do. What for me works is having a standard phrase. If I'm feeling really, really annoyed and I'm at that point where I haven't managed to pull myself back. Sometimes I can pull myself back. If I can't pull myself back, it happened today, I couldn't pull myself back, I can say something like, I'm feeling really frustrated. And that's my phrase that tells me to calm down. That tells me that alerts my brain, if you like, alerts my brain and my body that I've been triggered. And your phrase might look different. It might say, what have I written here on my notes? I need time to think, I'm feeling frustrated, I need a bit of space, I need to do 10 deep breaths in the other room, whatever it might be. It's just, if we can get to that point of body awareness where we feel that something's gone awry, or we've already said what we want to say, we've already had the overreaction, we've already shouted, just to say, I'm feeling really frustrated, or I need to go and calm down. That is so amazing, because it lets us, our bodies, know that something's going on that isn't right, and that can bring us to a place of calm. If deep breathing works for you in that time, that's amazing. Definitely do deep breathing. You might have a deep breathing that might work in the moment, or you might have a phrase that works in the moment, or you might need to wave your arms about or do a stretch or something that can take you out of that amygdala. We want to take us out of that reptilian brain in that moment, but it takes practice. So in the moment, try and get yourself out of that scary space where you're in fight, flight, or freeze. You know that something's awry. You know something. You know you've overreacted. So do something to get yourself out of that. And then let me have a sip of my tea. And we're going to talk a bit more. Another thing that you can do if it's something that's like a spill or a breakage, something that I find really useful actually is when I'm feeling annoyed but not really triggered, what I can do is say out loud what's happened. Like, oh, there's water on the floor. Oh, that glass fell over. Oh, that glass is broken now. State factually, we're going to need a dustpan and brush, or let's go cloth, or let's wipe up this spill because the floor is going to be slippery. Say something factual, actually. Just say out loud what has happened. That, again, slows our brain down, means we're not going to go into the amygdala, and gives us a bit of breathing space, literally a bit of thinking space, a bit of breathing space, so we can come back to the highest version, the best version of ourselves. So that's what to do in the moment. And then the second part I wanted to talk about is our background work. So our reflection later, that day, that evening, a few minutes later if you can, but that's probably, if you're with young children all day, that's definitely not possible. But what can really, really help, what really benefits this process, is our reflection later. So get out your journal. If you don't have a journal, and you can get a journal like this, which is £2.50 if you're in the UAE, £2.50 from Carrefour. It's this book, and I write in it every day, everything that's happening. I've got loads of them for different reasons, but journaling for me is a really transformative tool, and I know it's been proved by neuroscience so many times, so I won't need to go too much into the science about it, but basically, when we write something down, it helps us solve problems. Our brain goes into problem-solving mode when we write something down. So, for example, our reflection around the trigger that we had today, we can write down in our journal what was happening in my body, what was happening for me when Harry broke that glass and I shouted at him. And just write it all out. What happened? What did I feel in my body? Why was I so angry? And the reasons could be, he hadn't been listening all morning, and it was just one thing after the other. That's the second glass he's broken today. I know he's capable of carrying a glass safely. I don't understand why he's not listening today. All of these things, write it all out, write it all out, write it all out, write it all out. Lean into those really uncomfortable feelings. Lean into that feeling of frustration and rage and annoyance you felt towards your child. Lean into everything to get it out, to release it, because we don't want to hold on to it anymore. The more we hold on to these emotions, they become stagnant in our body, and then we have blocks in our body. We have blocks with tight muscles. We have blocks with back problems and slip discs and all of these type of things. These are all blocks that happen from our emotions. It's literally just trapped emotions in our body, and they manifest physically and very, very painfully as well. So the first thing that journaling does is it releases everything. We don't need to hold on to anything, so release everything by writing it all down. Lean into those uncomfortable moments. You may have a few aha moments where you realize, actually, just through the process of writing, you realise that, oh, your father always used to get really annoyed when you dropped a glass, and you could feel the tension when something was broken. You would have that feeling of dread. Sometimes just journaling might bring up that feeling of dread, and you recall what it was. You recall that you were terrified when you broke something because your father or your mother would get angry. And so then that's a beautiful place to start, because we're like, okay, I'm not responding to my child, I'm responding as little Charlotte. That's me. And then we can do inner child work around that, which is a huge topic. But once we know where the points are, we can think, when was the first time I felt this in my body? What's a really helpful tool is thinking about, when was the first time I can remember someone getting cross with me for breaking something? When was the first time I can remember my preferences not being honoured, that I wanted the red cup instead of the green cup or whatever? When was the first time I felt that feeling? And when we can really dive into those feelings, when was the first time we felt, and journal it all out. And this isn't about making anyone right or wrong. This is about getting to know ourselves better, getting to know ourselves more. When we know ourselves better, we can get the healing that we need, overcome what we need to overcome. We can be better parents and partners and friends, because the more healed we are, the less we're projecting our wounds, and our experience of the world is not through the lens of our wounds. And that's really, really what we want, because we just want to have a clear channel to the world to give what we're going to give, and raise the people up, and empower everyone, our children and our family and our wider community. And we can't do that if we're operating from our wounds. So the reason for doing this work is not only to make ourselves feel better, but we're all working towards a more peaceful and a harmonious world, which is what Dr. Montessori was working towards in her classrooms and in this way of life. So we felt we may be able to feel, when was the first time we felt this feeling in our body? If all of this is completely alien, and you're writing this out, and you still think it's just about the child and the broken glass or the spill or them being rude about you, that's okay. Keep writing, keep journaling, and every time that trigger happens, have the discipline to journal, because you will see a pattern. It will come over time. You will suddenly realize that you have gone back to your childhood. You will realize where that trigger comes from. You'll realize the dread or the fear or whatever it was that came from your childhood. And it comes in time. It just takes a little bit of work and a little bit of cultivation of this habit of reflecting. And all of this is done with so much love and so much self-compassion. We are not berating our parents because they did things wrong. That's not what it's like. Everyone is, all parents, all of us are doing everything, but through the lens of through the lens of what we interpret our parent did. And our parent was doing it just from their wounds. They're operating from their wounds, just like we are when we're triggered. So it's not good or bad. It's just the way it is. It's very much like, if we can keep knowing that it's our work to do this healing, and that our children are going to break things, they are going to be rude to us, they are going to get things wrong, but how we can respond to it, how we can look inside ourselves, is what makes the difference. So view it with self-compassion. That's the main thing. Journal it out, get it all out on paper. Let me see if there's anything else on my notes. I don't think there are. It's so you've got two elements to recap. When we are triggered in the moment, we can say exactly what's happened in a factual way, like a factual account, to try and keep us in our brain. We can do some deep breathing or some breath work if we can do that, if we manage to do it. Or we can have our stock phrase, or I feel really frustrated, or I need some space, or I'm going to go and do some deep breathing. Any of those things really give ourselves some space in the moment, give ourselves a little bit of time. And that's done in the three ways: deep breathing, saying exactly what's happened, or hi, how are you? Or we can just say what we're feeling. I feel frustrated, I feel upset, I feel like I need some space, those things. And then secondly, our points for reflection. Our reflection is really where the work is done, and the reflection that we do after the event is what allows us over time to have responses, to switch our responses. And again, this isn't something that is going to happen overnight. This is, you may get to the stage that 80% of the time you react as best version of yourself. You react exactly as you wanted to. You are able to diffuse the situation. It's not a big deal. You can move through. You can get over it, and it's not a big deal in your day. And maybe that's going to be 80% of the time you can get to that you can do it, but there's still going to be that 20% where you're going to overreact. And it is what it is. We are all human. The most important thing is to have this reflection. Just the fact that we are reflecting that we overreacted when our child broke that glass or spilt that drink, or noticing that we are very uncomfortable with our child being rude or disrespectful to us. And children can be really, really rude, really disrespectful, can't they? Anyone with older children knows this. It's normal. It's normal behaviour. That's what they're meant to do, to challenge us and to challenge our authority and push boundaries, because that's how they feel safe in their world. So the rudeness and the disrespect is normal. Dropping or breaking or spilling things, I do that the whole time. I'm very clumsy. I drop and I break things so I can rationalise it. It's not something actually that bothers me. It's rudeness or unkindness actually bothers me more. Thank you for the hearts. But I know that for the children's father, dropping something, so breaking something or spilling something, is really big for him. He knows now, after working on this for several years, that he is coming from the place of being little, and his father and he can remember his father's annoyance. He can feel that energy around his father being annoyed when something got broken or something got spilled. He can still feel that energy now, and he's almost 44, so it's like no wonder he's triggered by it, because he's been holding it in his body all of these years. So as I said, the really important thing is to not hold on to it. When that happens, one of the ways, there's lots of ways, but one of the ways that I find really powerful is journaling. When it happens, later on that day or that evening, or when you get a chance, journal what's happened. This is what happened. Harry broke the glass. I really overreacted. I shouted at him. And then reflect on what was happening in my body. What was I feeling? Can I remember the first time in my life that I felt this feeling? And that's where we can start. With self-compassion, looking at ourselves. In the moment, do what you can to calm yourself down. And the points of reflection afterwards, this is a continual process, a lifelong process of being able to respond from the best version of ourselves. Does anyone have any questions about parenting triggers? And I'll check my notes while you're typing. And recapping the beginning of our conversation is, when we do get dysregulated, as soon as we realise that we've come out of our bodies, as soon as we realise that something's gone wrong and we've shouted or overreacted, then feel in our bodies what has gone wrong. Just notice, where are we holding that tension? Because if we've shouted, if we overreacted, if we've acted from a place which isn't the person that we want to be, we're going to feel it in our body. We might feel it in our temples, we might have a headache, we might have neck ache or jaw ache, clenched fists, or other parts of our bodies clenched. Notice where we feel it in our body. That's the main thing, because then once we notice where we feel it in our body, we can release it. We don't need to hold on to these things. These things happen. We must oh yeah older siblings bullying younger ones, a huge trigger for me. So I have a great comment from Sophia. Older siblings bullying younger ones, huge trigger for me. I can't step away as I need to physically step in. Any tips? Now, this is really, really interesting. We've had a couple of lives, Sophia, about sibling dynamics. Firstly, my question to you, are you sure that they are bullying? What is the actual dynamic between the children? Are you absolutely sure, or is that something that's coming through your lens? What is each party getting out of that scenario? you need to physically step in. Sophia, can you remind me how old your children are? I have a feeling that they're like 9 and 7, something like that. Is that right? Physically stepping in, yeah, it's really interesting, because the more, I mean, you're going to remind me how old they are, but I think they're a bit older. The more that we step in and the more we intervene, the more we do, the less they're able to problem solve. So we can talk about it in the moment. Then, as you say, if you're feeling you're having to step in at the moment, that's one thing. But our reflective work is massive in this. And the answers of what we need to know to do, yeah, unkind, okay. Sophia's answer to my question is what's going on is it's probably through my lens, but they're being unkind, biting, hitting, kicking, tormenting. This is all completely normal sibling behavior. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old next week, and this is completely normal, and they love each other. They really love each other, but when one of them wants to, I think the word, torment the other, then that's what happens. What I do is the one who is upset, if they've upset and being hurt, then I pull them on my lap and I say, this is really hard. I empathize as much as I can. I don't try and fix anything. I don't try and stop it. The only time I would stop it is because my son is younger and he doesn't actually have that impulse control. Like if he gets frustrated and tired, he will pull hair, and it'll either be my hair or it'll be Olivia's hair. So in that, I do stop him, because he gets actually into that stage where he can't stop. Do you know what I mean? As children, those of you watching with younger children will know what I mean. Like, remember, 2-3-year-olds, that it becomes like a compulsion. Then they can't actually stop doing what they're doing, like they're biting, or it happens a lot with 2-year-olds, the biting or their hair pulling, whatever it is. So those things, when they can't physically stop themselves, you can see that they're outside their body and then do physically stop. But the older children, and also it's got to come, particularly with older children, well, even from three upwards, it's got to come with problem solving. This isn't working. We empathize in the moment. This is really hard. This isn't working. Harry really wants to connect with you, but you don't want to. I saw him. Recast exactly what happened. Say exactly what happened. Harry really wanted to play and you didn't want to, so you ignored him because you're working on your colouring. And so Harry wanted to connect with you, so he started hitting you, and you didn't like that, and he pulled your hair, and that was really sore, and I can see that. And I'm really sorry. This is really hard, isn't it? And it's just that talking through exactly what has happened. And then problem solving in the bigger picture, there's 2 courses of action. There is talking to the children about kindness, talking to the children about body boundaries, but there's also our own reflection. In your journal, then the days that happen in that journal, what is really happening between my children? What is the dynamic between the siblings? What do I feel in my body when they're fighting and I feel that I need to physically intervene? When have I felt this feeling before? What was my relationship like with my siblings? Can I, a friend of mine who's one of 5 children, and she often speaks about how hard it was, because in a family of 5 children, because the oldest ones, they were always told to respect the older siblings, and so the older siblings could, it's like an abuse of power. They were power hungry, so they could, anything that they said go. They were just taught, the younger children were taught they had to blindly respect the older children, which is of course nonsense. Now we know that, but a generation ago that's what was normal, wasn't it? And it's really checking in with ourselves. What's happening? What are we experiencing in that moment? What are we feeling in our body? When was the first time we felt that? And then we can pour our love and our self-compassion and speak to our inner child in that situation. And that inner child is Sophia, maybe 8 years old, and you speak to Sophia and you find out, what did she really need? Did she really need, when big brother or big sister was being mean to her, or little brother or little sister was being mean to her, did she just really want a cuddle? Is that all she wanted? And we then give ourselves what we felt was missing from that situation. And that means when we go into that situation again in real life, we, over time, and this is like meditation, it's building that muscle, we can respond in a different way. We can respond rather than react. Sam has asked a question. Can you give us some tips on how to speak to your partner about not shouting? Hi, thank you for joining. Okay. I would say for your partner not shouting, and I know you quite well, Sam, so I'm going to say to you that you can tell him the facts that neuroscience, pleasure Sophia, that neuroscience has shown in the past 10, 15 years that shouting is damaging to a child and we don't want to do it. You can also say in the same breath, make sure it's in the same breath so he doesn't hear this as a criticism, that the situations are very frustrating. Toddlers are very, very frustrating. There is a lot going on and we are we are called for reserves of patience that we probably have never ever used before, and that it's really, really hard and it is really, really difficult. However, we have got to do things every day. What can we commit to doing every day which is going to help us not see this through the lens of our triggers so much? So what I would recommend, Sam, is talk through the science behind it. Assure him that you find it really, really hard as well. You know how hard it is. You appreciate how hard it is because you're doing it every day, all day, every day, and that you're here to support each other. You can suggest things together. You can say, okay, when I'm shouting, when I'm out of control, would you be willing to take over? Would you be willing to support me in this? Would you be willing? And you offer this, you offer each other that get out clause, because if we can get someone, if our partner can see that we're dysregulated and then can offer support in that moment, that is so powerful. If our partner can then take the child to have their bath or take them outside to the park because they can see that we are hurting, we have got something going on for us, that's hugely, hugely powerful. So can you come to arrangement where he sees when you're triggered, you see when he's triggered, and the other parent can swoop in to support? That's something which is worth talking about, because then it's collaboration. You don't want him at all to feel, or any of our partners, whether male or female, to think that they are being criticised in this, to think that we are telling them only our way and that's the best way and that's the end of the story, because it's very, very disempowering. And as someone who has really struggled with her anger and really struggled with her rage in the personal development I've done on myself in recent years, that somebody telling me that I'm angry, somebody pointing out my flaws when already I feel so much guilt and so much shame around it, it's not helpful. It's not conducive for me to feel better about this and to do better. It actually brings more guilt and more shame, which then keeps me stuck. So see what you can do to empower. See what you can do together as a team to solve this, to support him. Because if he's got a problem with anger and shouting, then it means you have it as well, because you're married to him. And obviously your daughter is what binds you together. So it's more, okay, what can we do, broadly speaking, overall, to support you? Because I can see that this is not working for you, if you see what I mean. I don't think there's any more questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We had so many people join today, and for your questions and for your participation. And I very much look forward to seeing you next week for Top Tip Tuesday. Keep sending in your suggestions. You can go to my website, enrichingenvironments.com, to my shop to sign up for any online workshops. And we've got forthcoming, we have got pay-per-view coming. So we're going to have pay-per-view, thanks Jihan, I'm going to have pay-per-view workshops. We are going to have meditation for children on there, and there's all the usual stuff that we have at the moment. We have the nanny enrichment program, we have the workshops, and yeah, we've got lots going on. The next film at Yoga House is on the 26th of March. This is going to be Water School, which tells the story. It's a documentary on girls young female students living along the banks of 6 of the world's major rivers. And it's fascinating how water and water conservation affects the girls personally, their families, their communities, and then of course the impact on water in climate change, in our environment, in sustainability. So it's a really beautiful film by the Swarovski Foundation, and it's an educational water program that they've done globally. So that's a really inspiring film. That's Friday 26th of March. Send in your questions as ever and suggestions. I am Enriching Environments on Instagram, as you know, and Facebook, and my website is enrichingenvironments.com. Thank you so much for joining me this evening, and thank you for the hearts, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a beautiful evening. Bye bye.